Lots of announcer news and announce team shakeups in the news this week. Tom Phillips is no longer the voice of Monday Night Raw. He has been banished to the purgatory of 205 Live. He would have a bigger audience listening to him if he was standing in the middle of the local farmer's market with a bullhorn than he will calling matches on 205 Live. I love the press release they put out. Tom Phillips is still with the company. He's being moved to 205 Live and he's still in charge of this and that. It's like, really? I mean, you try to bullshit us into believing that this was some kind of almost like a promotion of sorts for Tom Phillips. Well, Tom is going to be doing this show now instead of that show. This was not a promotion. This was a demotion of the worst kind, no matter what you think of Monday Night Raw, to go from calling as the lead play-by-play announcer, calling the flagship show on USA Network 3 hours every Monday night, to being on 205 Live is like being put in solitary confinement. So, adios, Tom Phillips. It was nice knowing you. He has been replaced by Adnan Virk, formerly of ESPN, now working for MLB Network. The new team is Adnan Virk, Corey Graves, and Byron Saxton. I watched the show on Monday, which I'll talk about. I listened to Virk on his first night on the job. He sounds like he's out there calling a baseball game. That's what he sounds like. Which is not good for a pro wrestling show. But it's been 1 week. Maybe he'll grow into it. He's not going to last long anyway. Let's just be honest here. He's not going to last long. And it's not even his fault. None of these people do. None of these people do. He is their latest attempt to throw a fresh coat of paint on a broken down used car. And it's nice to get a fresh voice in there every now and then, especially if you feel like things really aren't working. The announcing is the least of their issues, by the way, with Monday Night Raw. And I'll actually stick up for Tom Phillips in a way here. I did not listen or watch Raw every week, listen to his commentary and think, wow, Tom Phillips, he's this fantastic announcer. At no point did I think that. But Tom Phillips was very perfectly serviceable at his job. Right? He knew what he was talking about. He knew all the players. He had been there for a number of years. He had a good voice. He was perfectly fine. He was not great. He was not terrible. He was exactly what WWE looks for in an announcer. He did his job well. There was really nothing wrong with Tom Phillips. And the fact that they have brought in someone who, while they may have been a wrestling fan, they may have been a WWE fan, so maybe Adnan Virk was watching for many years, maybe he knew who some of the names were, but he clearly is not as familiar with the product as Tom Phillips would be. He does not seemingly have the voice that you would expect, the emotion or whatever you want to call it that you would find in a play-by-play announcer on Monday Night Raw. What they have done here is they have taken someone who was perfectly fine in the role and replaced him with someone who clearly is not as good as him, who is not as good of a fit. And they have done it just seemingly for the sake of doing it. And I don't know if this is completely accurate or not, but from what I understand, Nick Khan is the new president of WWE. He's making a lot of big moves in this company. I believe this was a Nick Khan move. Nick Khan at one time represented Adnan Virk, or may have been his agent or something. If that's the case, then that explains a lot about how he got this job. But I just find it ridiculous that you would take somebody who was good at what they do, who has the product knowledge, and replace them with someone who clearly is inferior to that person. If you are going to take somebody and replace them at their job with somebody who is better than them, then that's fine. But if you are going to replace them with someone who clearly now has to learn on the job, oh, well, he'll get better at it, or what, then why did you even make the change in the first place? Do you honestly believe that of all the problems that plague Monday Night Raw, the fucking play-by-play announcer was the biggest problem that you had? So I will stick up in that way for Tom Phillips. Didn't deserve to be replaced by somebody who clearly is not as good in that position as he was. But again, I don't think this guy is going to last very long anyway because they're all a bunch of interchangeable parts to this company. Unbelievably, by the way, he claims, Virk does, that he still has yet to meet Vince McMahon. He was hired and made the new voice of Monday Night Raw, their flagship show, and he has not even met the boss yet. Which, again, it just goes to the point I was making about how, I don't know if haphazard is the right word for this move. It's almost like, yeah, okay, you recommend this guy? Sounds good. Put him on the show. Like, no real thought was given to why are you putting this guy in this particular spot? Why do you need him in that spot? What does he bring to the show in that spot that the guy who was there before didn't already bring? I'll say one thing. His ear canal will quickly become acquainted with Vince McMahon. If he hasn't met Vince McMahon yet, his ears, he'll be acquainted with him pretty fast. That much we all know. Smackdown got the better end of the announcer shakeup. Pat McAfee is the new color voice on Smackdown. He now joins Michael Cole, replacing Corey Graves, who has moved over to Monday Night Raw. I prefer the two-man booth anyway, but McAfee, he's just a natural. He's a natural at it. It's only been 1 week. So we will have to judge Virk, a month, 6 weeks from now. Same with Pat McAfee, but in the first week, Virk didn't really impress. Pat McAfee, I thought it fit him like a glove. It fit him like he had been there already working in that spot for months. He did well. He's obviously a big fan. He's got the product knowledge. He's got the charisma, which I think you want in not even necessarily in a play-by-play guy, but more so in the color personality. He certainly has a lot of that. He's got personality. So I think SmackDown got the better end of that. But on the subject of announcers, next Sunday, Impact Wrestling is losing its world title. Kenny Omega is going to beat Rich Swann in a champion versus champion match, winner take all for the AEW and the Impact World titles at the Impact Rebellion pay-per-view. I will give praise to Impact for doing what they can possibly try to do to make this match feel as big as possible. They hosted a 40-minute press conference the other day with Omega, Swann, Don Callis, Scott D'Amore, Tony Khan, all were present at the dais. It ended with Omega slapping Swann across the face. There was a big pull-apart brawl. And they have announced that Mauro Ranallo will be calling the main event next Sunday. Now, right now, it is just a one-off to give the main event a big fight feel. I think it's a great get for them. It could potentially lead to more in the future. Look, it could potentially even lead to something with Mauro and AEW. Don't forget, AEW has a second show coming to TNT later on this year. I don't know if it's an hour or if it's 2 hours. But they have a second show that's coming, not to YouTube. It's coming to TNT. Impact, I think as far as promoting this match, Impact is making all the right moves. But there is a glaring problem. The 800-pound elephant in the room. Why this is not working as well as it could be. Why this doesn't feel as big as it should feel. For one, Kenny Omega is not losing to Rich Swann. They could always do some sort of fuck finish where both guys keep their belts. That would only piss off the audience, though. That would make the audience feel cheated. You can't do that. And Rich Swann is not beating Kenny Omega for the AEW title. So there is no real drama there. The outcome is pretty obvious. And part of the reason that it is not in doubt has to do with the biggest problem of all. The name Rich Swann has not been acknowledged a single time on AEW Dynamite. If all you did was watch TNT, you would never even know that the AEW Championship was being defended next weekend. Now, maybe that'll change this week. Maybe they'll throw out a quick mention of it or a quick Kenny Omega promo on TV this Wednesday. They should. But they should have already been doing that. They have not mentioned Rich Swann. They have not mentioned this match a single time on Dynamite. Let alone the fact that their own world title is potentially it is in jeopardy of being taken by someone who works for another company. AEW may lose its champion in a week. You would never know if all you did was watch TNT. It's as if Impact is fighting a battle that AEW never even bothered showing up to. They're going to win by default. And that really has hurt the build of this match. But the idea that Rich Swann would be the one to take the AEW title from Kenny Omega, that he would be the one to end the reign that Omega has been on, is completely laughable. Rich Swann is a perfectly fine professional wrestler, but he ain't beating Kenny Omega for that championship. And if you think so, then you must be on some of that funny stuff. You got to pass some of that stuff along to me. We can sit and we can share it. Because Kenny Omega ain't losing the AEW title.